Shri Sai Ram. Dear students, welcome back to the 10th class State Syllabus Science Book 1, Chapter Control and Coordination. For our better understanding of this chapter, Control and Coordination, we have divided it into 6 parts. Out of them, today's is the part 3, which mainly deals with the topic human nervous system. Under that, CNS, central nervous system, mainly related to the brain. Before we pass on to the today's class of this human nervous system, CNS brain, under part 3 out of 6 parts, let us recap the previous classes' main points of this chapter. In our previous class, we understood about the control and coordination in higher plants, which takes place by tropism and phytohormones, which we also call them as plant hormones. We also understood control and coordination in higher animals, which are nothing but vertebrates, which have a well-developed backbone, by the nervous system and endocrine system. Among these two systems, in higher animals, we started with the human nervous system. Before we passed on to that one, we came to know that in higher animals, the nervous system consists of the receptors, which are nothing but the sense organs in the body, the effectors, which are nothing but the muscles and the glands, and the conductors, which are connecting the receptors and the effectors, and they are nerves in the body of the higher animals. Further, the whole nervous system has its own unique structural and functional unit, which we called it as neuron. Neuron is the structural and functional unit of nervous system. Then we came to know, on the basis of the functions, the nerves in the body are classified into 3. Number 1, sensory nerves. Number 2, motor nerves. And number 3, mixed nerves. After recapping the previous class main points, let us check out and clear up our home assignment 2 answers. Define the following terms and name the part of the body which are related. Receptors, the organs which receive the stimulus. In the body, there are sense organs. And 5 sense organs: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Effectors, the organs which show the visible response to the stimulations. They are nothing but the muscles and glands. The mixed nerves, nerves which carry both stimulus and response. They function as the sensory nerves as well as the motor nerves, or the nerves called mixed nerves are found in the body in the spinal cord, which we will discuss in the further classes. The second question: what happens at the synapse between 2 neurons? We understood in our previous class that synapse is the junction between 2 neurons, where one neuron axon get connected to the other neuron's dendrite. For what purpose? So what is going to happen in this junction of 2 neurons? Let us see the answer. When the electrical signal, which is nothing but the nerve impulse, reaches the end of axon of one neuron, it releases chemical substance, and that substance diffuses across the synapse towards the dendron of other neuron. The chemical substance stimulates the receptor sites in the dendron of another neuron and generate another electrical signal. The gist of this is the axon which has carried the response in the form of electrical signal reaches to the other neuron's dendron, then it gets diffused, spread. And that has been spread in the other neuron's dendron again converts itself into electrical signal and reaches to the receptors in the dendron of another neuron and generate another electrical signal. It means the nerve impulses start to move from one neuron to the other neuron in a regular manner only because of the synapse that is being found between the neurons. The third question. Draw a neat labeled diagram of a nerve cell, which is none other than the neuron, and write the functions of the parts. You can observe the neuron structure that is being drawn. Mainly it has three main parts. The cell body called as cyton, the finger-like projections to the cyton called as dendrites, and in singular we call it as dendron. And the longest dendrite is nothing but the axon. And is the terminal, the axon terminal we call it as. Cyton or the cell body stores the messages and send to the axon. Dendrites receive the stimulus and send to cyton. Axon, the longest part of the neuron, which conducts the impulses away from the cell body. In simple way, the dendrites receives the stimulus and gives it to the cyton. The cyton sends the responses in the form of nerve impulses to the axon, and the axon carries that responses and gives to the respective target receptor sites for reacting. This is the function of the parts of this neuron. Hope all the children have written their answers and also have checked out and cleared their doubts regarding these questions which were being given. Now, let us move on to the today's part 3 of control and coordination. Out of the 6 parts, the part 3 mainly deals with the human nervous system, and also under that, today we deal about the CNS, the central nervous system. Under that, majorly we consider today's part is about the brain of human. The whole human nervous system, for our better understanding, we have divided it into 3 subdivisions. One is the central nervous system called CNS, the peripheral nervous system which we call it as PNS, and the autonomic nervous system which we call it as ANS. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system consists of the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. The autonomic nervous system consists of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Further, the brain is being understood under 3 subdivisions: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Further, the forebrain is again being divided for our understanding purpose into cerebrum, diencephalon, and the hindbrain into cerebellum, pons varoli and medulla oblongata. Today, we will be concentrating on the central nervous system. Under the central nervous system, we deal about the human brain. The whole part which will be dealt in today's content. So we will be discussing about the central nervous system. Central nervous system, CNS, which mainly consists of brain and spinal cord. The central nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord, both are being protected by three layers, three membrane layers: the outer dura mater, the middle arachnoid, and the inner pia mater. All the three membranes together is called as meninges. And in between the layers of these membranes of the brain and the spinal cord, there is a fluid called CSF, which we call it as cerebrospinal fluid. A watery fluid which is nothing but the cerebrospinal fluid. The cerebrospinal fluid which is being filled between the spaces of these meninges. For what purpose? The purpose of this CSF or cerebrospinal fluid is it protects the brain and the spinal cord from injuries, and also it provides nutrients. So the two important functions of this CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, which is a watery fluid that is being found between the layers of these meninges, mainly protects the brain and spinal cord from injuries, and also it provides the nutrients for both brain and spinal cord. Along with these three membranes, the brain is again being covered by a skull, a hard bony layer, which is called as the cranium. In Kannada, we call that as Bude. The protecting layer for the spinal cord is the vertebral column, Kasheru Stamba, in Kannada we call it. Let us go in detail about the CNS brain. Brain, man stands unique, or human stands unique and supreme in the living world. The supremacy is due to a highly well-developed brain. Among all the creations, human creation is the ultimate and supermost, to tell you all. ಮಾನವ ಜನ್ಮ ಬಲು ದೊಡ್ಡದಯ್ಯ ಹಾಳು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳಬೇಡಿರ ಹುಚ್ಚಪ್ಪಗಳಿರ is the sayings of the great personalities, because this is the only birth as human being which you can reach God or you can become God. That is the ultimate of the life, of the existence in the creation. Under that, the man who stands very unique and supreme in the world, mainly his supremacy is due to highly well-developed brain. An average weight of the human brain, if we think of from the birth till the growth, the newborn baby, the newborn child, the brain weight is 350 grams. 1 year old child, 1000 grams. An adult man, 1400 grams, the weight of the human brain. An adult woman, 1260 grams. It is an average, approximate weight of the human brain. And this supremacy of the human being, mainly due to the well-developed brain and its average weight, then let us see why it is more unique. The vertical section of human brain tells us the complexity of the brain. This is the human brain structure diagram where you can observe the parts. The A, this is the cerebrum, C-E-R-E-B-R-U-M, cerebrum. 3/4 of the human brain is being covered with this outermost layer, that is cerebrum. If we come to this part, this is the midbrain. Thalamus. If you come to the leaf-like structure, which is nothing but the cerebellum. Cerebellum. And here you find the pons varolii. The pons varolii. And this is the medulla oblongata. These are the parts that are found under the VS or the vertical section of human brain, irrespective of male or female. And these are the main parts to the level, to the 10th class level. This much understanding is being okay. Because as we go further in our studies, if we take the life sciences as the major, there you are going to study more deeper about this content part relating to the human brain. For the present curriculum of the 10th class, if we know about these parts and their function and their structure, it is well enough. Forebrain. The forebrain, as we know that the brain, for our understanding, we have divided it into 3 parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain. The forebrain has 2 parts, cerebrum and diencephalon. The diencephalon has 2. So in general it is 3. The diencephalon has thalamus and hypothalamus. Let us move to the cerebrum. It is the largest part of the brain. 3/4 of the brain is being covered with this cerebrum. And it consists of 2 equal halves, which we call it as cerebral hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, which are separated by a groove. It has 2 regions, the outer cortex and the inner medulla. The cortex of the cerebrum is a grey matter and it is having the cytons of the neuron. The medulla is a white matter in the cerebrum and it is been having the axons and the dendrites. The cortex is deeply folded into ridges which forms convolutions. We call that ridges as convolutions, which increase the surface area of the cerebrum. More the ridges on the cerebrum, the area of the cerebrum also increases. As the convolutions increase, the memory power, the IQ, the intelligent quotient, what is called as IQ, and also the thinking power and the will power increases, because the cerebrum is the seat of it is the seat of consciousness, seat of intelligence, seat of imagination, reasoning, emotions expression, mental activity and willpower. Mental activities, memory power also we can tell. So cerebrum, the highly developed, highly priority given in the brain parts. No doubt all the parts are important, but the cerebrum, which occupies 3/4 of the brain, it is the seat of consciousness, alertness, intelligence, memory power, reasoning, thinking power, willpower, and also the emotions. Very unique thing of this cerebrum is the right hemisphere of the cerebrum controls the organs of the left side, and the left hemisphere of the cerebrum controls the organs of the right side. Then a question arises here. If the right hand and the right leg are not reacting to the stimulus, they are not doing their functions properly, then which side of the brain is being damaged? Understand here, the right organ called hand and the leg are not functioning, then which side of the brain is being injured or damaged? It is the left side, because the left side of the brain controls the right side organs of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left organs of the body. So the cerebrum, most important, which is a seat of alertness, intelligence, consciousness, which we understood already, the brain. And now we go to the diencephalon, where it is found. It's the parts of the brain below the cerebrum. Why we called it as parts? Because the diencephalon has two. Number one is the thalamus, and number two is the hypothalamus. Thalamus receives the nerve impulses from sense organs and sends them to upper region of the brain. Hypothalamus regulates the body temperature, the water balance, the appetite or the hunger, what we call it as, and sleep. It regulates means what? It brings them in a balanced way, in an equilibrium state, in the constancy way. It also controls the autonomic nervous system, which we will discuss further, which is nothing but anus. And also the pituitary gland, it also controls. See, the pituitary gland is an endocrine gland, which we study under the endocrine system in the further classes. Here to tell about the pituitary gland, it is a master gland. It is an endocrine gland. It is of a pea-shaped size, is this pituitary gland. So hypothalamus regulates the body temperature, the water balance, appetite and sleep. It also controls the autonomic nervous system and also the pituitary gland secretions also. This about the diencephalon, which has the thalamus and the hypothalamus, which are found just below the cerebrum. Next is the midbrain. The midbrain is a relay station. It is a connecting one. For what? For the forebrain and the hindbrain. The midbrain, it is connecting the cerebrum, which comes under forebrain, and to the cerebellum, which is in the hindbrain part, which we will study further. It serves mainly as relay station through which impulses move from hindbrain to the forebrain. Why we call the midbrain as relay station? Because the impulses are carried from hindbrain to the forebrain. It is a pathway, it carries, so it is a relay station. It is also concerned with the receiving the impulses from eyes and ears. These are the functions of the midbrain. Midbrain is the shortest part also. It is a relay station connecting the hindbrain and the forebrain. Hindbrain, it has three parts. Under that, the first one is the pons varolii. a conducting medium between cerebrum, cerebellum and medulla oblongata. It is a conducting medium for cerebrum, cerebellum and medulla oblongata. It has the controlling centers of mastication. When we are going to have the food inside our body, we start to chew the food. Mastication in the human life processes where we studied about the human digestive system, the mechanical digestion that takes place in the buccal cavity with the help of the teeth and the tongue, where we see the mastication taking place. So mastication of the food is mainly controlled by pons varolii. Facial expressions. A very good dramatist the person is. He acts any role you give to that person. He himself becomes to that role and acts the best way, which we call that the best way acting is mainly through face. The facial expressions what we see in movies or in dramas, in any sort of mono acting or miming, in all those things. The facial expression controlling center is also this pons varolii. And respiration, it also helps in the respiration. Out of 12 pairs of cranial nerves, the 4 pairs originate from pons varolii. See, the cranial nerves are the brain nerves. There are 12 pairs which come from the brain. Out of that 12 pairs, 4 pairs originate from pons varolii. This is about the hindbrain's first part called pons varolii, which is a conducting medium for cerebrum, cerebellum and medulla oblongata. It has the centers for mastication, facial expression and respiration. 4 pairs of cranial nerves originate from pons varolii. And now we go on to the second part of this hind brain, and that is cerebellum. The cerebellum lies behind and below the cerebrum. Lies behind and below the cerebrum. Responsible for the maintenance of equilibrium and posture of the body. It coordinates and controls the movements of muscles in actions like walking or running. So cerebellum, equilibrium state of the body organs, mainly the position of our standing, walking, running, jumping, skipping, hopping, whatever it may be. Voluntary activities are being brought to equilibrium state or being under the normal condition, mainly due to the cerebellum. The third part, the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata, the posterior most part of the brain. It is the posterior most part of the brain and continues as the spinal cord. The continuity of this medulla oblongata is the spinal cord. It has the centers which control the involuntary activities, those activities that are not under our control, such as the secretion of enzymes, the blood pressure, all these activities, the heartbeat, they are not under our control. So the involuntary activities are being controlled because of the centers that are found in the medulla oblongata. Assignment 3. Dear students, in today's class of control and coordination of 10th class science, under the part 3, we understood about human nervous system. Under that, The central nervous system, under the central nervous system, we understood about human brain. The vertical section of human brain, the forebrain, the midbrain and the hindbrain. The parts of this forebrain are the cerebrum and diencephalon. And the diencephalon has the thalamus and the hypothalamus. The midbrain acts as a relay station between the forebrain and the hindbrain. And the hindbrain, which is having the pons varoli, the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata, where the extension part of this medulla oblongata is the spinal cord. And we also studied that the whole brain and the spinal cord are covered by the three membranes called as meninges, and the brain has additional protection called as cranium. Overall, the whole central nervous system is being nourished with nutrients and protected from injuries by a fluid called CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. Hope all the children have understood the today's topic of human nervous system, CNS brain. The assignment 3. Which part of the human brain carry out the following functions? Mastication, water balance, facial expression and enzyme secretions. You have to name the part of the brain which carries these functions. Second question. A person's right side of the body is being paralyzed. The paralysis or paralyzed. No any reactions. Which part of the brain is being injured? Hope all the students will write the perfect answers with self-effort for this assignment 3, and let us meet for the same chapter, Control and Coordination, Part 4 in the next class. Till that, have a good day. Thanking you one and all. Jai Sai Ram.